Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we are looking at a stack of notes that, it reads less like a history textbook and more like the season finale of a high-stakes HBO drama. We're talking about a figure who reigned for 54 years.
54 years. And just to pause on that for a second, that is a staggering amount of time.
It's incredible.
That record stood unbroken in China for, what, 1,800 years?
Exactly. It wasn't until the Kangxi Emperor in the Qing dynasty that anyone sat on the throne longer. We're talking about Emperor Wu of Han, or Liu Che.
Yep.
And to understand the stakes here, before him, the Han dynasty was, just a ruling house trying not to collapse.
Right, still picking up the pieces from the previous era.
And after him, Han became the identity of the civilization itself.
It's so true. Even today, the dominant ethnic group in China is called Han. The language is Hanyu. When we talk about the Han dynasty, Emperor Wu is the pivot point. He's the one who defines the geopolitical boundaries of China. He's literally drawing the map that we recognize today.
He draws the map, and he establishes the ideological framework that lasts 2,000 years.
But here's the thing that really hooked me when I was going through this material.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
You hear Emperor Wu, and the name Wu literally means martial or warlike.
Right, the same character as in wushu martial arts.
So you picture this like Conan the Barbarian type conqueror. And he was that, don't get me wrong.
He absolutely was. He expanded the empire to its breaking point.
But at the same time, this is the guy who establishes Confucianism, a philosophy of benevolence and ritual, as the state religion. He's a poet. He's reforming the calendar. He's patronizing musicians while simultaneously sending armies to die in the Gobi Desert.
That is the central contradiction of his life, isn't it? He was a man of immense creative ambition and, well, terrifying destructive capability.
And the tragedy, as we'll see, is that those two things were often indistinguishable. He built a superpower, but he almost destroyed society to do it.
So, our mission today is to unpack this life. We want to understand how a teenage emperor survived a Game of Thrones-style court to become a superpower builder, only to, succumb to paranoia and a really heartbreaking tragedy in his twilight years.
And to do that, we have to start at the very beginning, because even his birth feels like something out of a myth.
Oh, the prophecy. I love this part. So Liu Che isn't the oldest son. He's the 11th son of Emperor Jing. The odds of him sitting on the throne are astronomical. He's basically a backup to the backup.
Right. In a normal succession, he would have been given a nice title, a stipend, and sent away to some province to live out his days in obscurity.
But his mother, Wang Ji, she was a master of political branding. She claims she had a dream while she was pregnant.
A dream of a son falling into her womb.
A son. If you're going to make a bid for the throne, that is a pretty good PR move right out of the gate. I'm not just pregnant, I'm carrying the son.
It is. Emperor Jing was ecstatic. He took it as a divine implication. But let's be real. Dreams don't make emperors. Politics does.
And specifically, marriage politics.
Exactly. This is where we get one of the most famous stories in Chinese history, the story of the Golden House.
This anecdote is so charming on the surface, but when you really read between the lines, it's actually kind of ruthless. So Liu Che is, 5 years old? A toddler. And his aunt, the eldest Princess Guantao, holds him in her arms.
And Princess Guantao is a power player. We need to be clear about that.
Yeah.
She needs to secure her future.
Right. So she asks his 5-year-old if he wants to marry her daughter, Chen Zhao. Now, Chen Zhao is significantly older than him, basically a teenager while he's a toddler.
Which was not unusual, but still.
But the 5-year-old Liu Che looks at his aunt and says, "If I marry her, I will build a golden house for her."
It's a line that became a famous Chinese idiom, Jinwu Zhangjiao, or putting Jiao in a golden house. It has a different meaning today. It usually refers to a man lavishing money on a mistress, but its origin is this high-stakes political moment.
Because it wasn't just a cute kid saying a cute thing, was it?
Not at all. This is a sealed deal. This is a contract being signed in public. Princess Guantao had originally approached the mother of the actual crown prince, a woman named Lady Lai.
Okay.
She proposed a marriage alliance. But Lady Lai was arrogant. She was jealous of the princess's influence, and she made a fatal mistake by insulting the emperor's sister.
Rule number 1 of court politics.
Oh.
Do not insult the person who has the emperor's ear.
Precisely. So Princess Guantao pivoted. She went to Liu Che's mother, Consort Wang, and they formed an alliance. The golden house was the price of admission. You marry my daughter, and I will use my influence to destroy the current crown prince and get your son on the throne.
And it worked. They managed to get the original crown prince, Liu Rong, deposed and eventually exiled. I think he committed suicide later, didn't he?
He did. It's brutal. It just reminds us that Liu Che's ascent wasn't peaceful. He climbed over the ruined life of his half-brother to get to the throne.
So, in 141 BC, Emperor Jing dies, and Liu Che ascends the throne. He is 15 years old. He's Emperor Wu. But, and this is crucial, he isn't really in charge.
Not even close. If you look at the organizational chart, sure, he's the emperor. But if you look at where the power actually sits, it's with his grandmother, Grand Empress Dowager Du.
The matriarch, she sounds like a force of nature. She's blind, she's powerful, and she is a devout Taoist.
And this is a major ideological clash. We need to explain this because it's not just about religion. It's about how you run a government. The young Emperor Wu wants to be active. He listens to Confucian scholars who say, you need to reform, you need to be proactive, you need to distinguish rank and structure society.
They want big government.
And want big government. And Grandma Du. She believes in wu-wei in action, or laissez-faire governance. Her view is the empire is still recovering from the chaos of the Qin collapse and the civil wars. The people are tired.
Let them rest.
Let them rest. Do not interfere. Do not start wars. Do not build palaces. Just let the economy grow naturally.
So the kid tries to launch these reforms, the genuine reforms, right out of the gate in 141 BC. He wants to curb noble power, promote Confucianism, and Grandma Du just shuts him down.
Completely. She didn't just veto the laws. She crushed the movement. She had Wu's two primary mentors, Wang Zhang and Zhao Wan, arrested.
She forced them to commit suicide in prison.
Right. She essentially put the young emperor in a timeout.
A timeout involving executions. That sends a pretty clear message.
A very clear message. She stripped his allies of their positions. So Wu realizes he cannot win a head-on collision with his grandmother. She has the seniority, she has the connections, and she has the tiger tally, the control of the army.
This is the part that I found really clever. He creates this persona of a docile hedonist. He just pretends he wants to hunt and travel and look at scenery. Don't mind me, Grandma, I'm just going to go chase some rabbits.
It was a brilliant survival strategy, but while he was hunting in the imperial parks, he was actually recruiting. He started building what historians call the insider court.
What does that mean exactly, insider court?
Well, the regular bureaucracy, the outer court, was filled with old men loyal to his grandmother. So Wu recruited young, talented men from lower ranks to be his personal attendants, guards, and secretaries.
Ah, people who owed their loyalty only to him.
Exactly. He was building a shadow government right under her nose.
And there's that incredible story about the tiger tally that shows he wasn't just waiting around. This was in 138 BC, a few years before his grandmother died. The state of Dongyu was under attack by Minyu.
Right.
They begged for help. But to send the army, the emperor needs the tiger tally.
Right, let's explain the tally for a second.
Yeah.
It was a bronze tiger split in half. The local general held one half, the emperor held the other. Unless the two halves matched, the army wouldn't move. It was a check against rebellion.
But in this case, the emperor's half was effectively controlled by Grandma Du, and she's not going to give it to him. She's an isolationist. She says, not our problem.
Exactly. So what does Wu do? He sends an ambassador, a man named Yanzu, down to the region. Yanzu doesn't have the tally. He just has the imperial staff, which is basically a stick that represents the emperor's voice.
He's essentially bluffing his way through it.
It's a high-stakes bluff. Yanzu arrives and orders the local commandant to mobilize the navy. The commandant says, "Where is the tiger tally? I can't move without it."
And Yanzu executes him on the spot.
On the spot.
Wow. Any other questions?
Exactly. He executed the commander for treason, which terrified the subordinates, and he mobilized the navy to save Dongyu. It set a precedent. It showed that the emperor's personal will could bypass the traditional legal checks and balances. A risky move, but it worked.
But the real turning point, of course, is 135 BC.
Grand Empress Dowager Du dies.
And the training wheels come off. Now, Wu is in his early 20s. He's consolidated his power. He has his insider court. And he decides it is time to change the entire trajectory of the empire.
He honors his grandmother with a grand funeral and then immediately dismantles her policies. He dismisses the Taoists and brings back the Confucians. But his biggest change is looking north.
The Xiongnu.
The Xiongnu, the boogeyman of the era. This nomadic confederacy on the steppe.
Think of them as the precursors to the Mongols, right? Master horsemen.
Absolutely. And for decades, the Han policy had been Heikin. Marriage alliances, appeasement, We send you a princess, we send you silk, wine, rice, and you promise not to invade us.
Which didn't really work, did it? They took the stuff and raided anyway.
It was a protection racket.
No.
And it was deeply humiliating for the Han. Emperor Wu decided the empire was finally rich enough, thanks to his grandmother's savings, and strong enough to stop paying protection money and start fighting back.
But this wasn't just a decision to fight. It was a decision to completely change how they fought. I was reading about the Battle of May in 133 BC. This was the opening move.
It was supposed to be a clever trap. The Han hid 300,000 men in a valley and tried to lure the Xiongnu leader, the Xiongnu, into an ambush.
But he sniffed it out.
He did. The Xiongnu realized something was wrong. He saw fields full of cattle, but no herders, and he retreated before the trap could spring.
So it was a failure.
It was a tactical failure, but a huge strategic turning point. It ended the peace. But more importantly, Wu realized you cannot beat nomadic horsemen with slow infantry and chariots.
Yeah.
You can't catch the wind with a net.
You have to become the wind.
Exactly. And this is where we see the rise of the cavalry, and with it, the rise of these meritocratic generals, Wei King and Hu Kobing. These guys are legends.
They're the rock stars of the Han military, and their background is so interesting. Wei King was the half-brother of Wu's favorite concubine at the time, Wei Zifu. He wasn't from a high, noble military family.
No, he was an illegitimate child, a former stable boy.
And Hu Kobing was his nephew.
Right. Emperor Wu didn't care about pedigree. He cared about results. He wanted generals who could ride like the Xiongnu. And Hu Kobing in particular was a prodigy. He led his first campaign at 18.
He didn't carry heavy baggage trains. He lived off the land, captured enemy supplies, and moved at lightning speed.
They led these massive campaigns deep into the Gobi Desert. They didn't just defend the border. They crossed the desert to hunt the Xiongnu down in their own heartland.
The logistics of this are just mind-boggling for the ancient world. Sending 100,000 cavalry across a desert, it's like landing on the moon in terms of resource intensity.
And it all culminates in the Battle of Mo Bay in 119 BC.
That one sounds absolutely massive.
It was the climax. Wei King and Hu Kobing led a two-pronged assault. They crossed the desert, engaged the Xiongnu's main forces, and crushed them. It broke the back of Xiongnu power in the South Gobi. The Xiongnu even had a lament about it. We have lost Kilian Mountain. Our livestock has no breeding ground.
But the cost. I saw a figure that said the Han lost 80% of their war horses in that campaign.
80%. Tens of thousands of horses died from exhaustion, combat, disease. It was a victory, but a Pyrrhic one. It broke the bank, and it broke the ecological balance of the army.
But it secured the Hexi Corridor.
Which is vital.
Because the Hexi Corridor is the throat of the Silk Road. Which leads us to maybe my favorite figure in this whole deep dive, Zengin.
The traveler.
The ultimate traveler. In 139 BC, right before the wars really kicked off, Wu sends him out to find allies against the Xiongnu, and he gets captured immediately.
Immediately. Imagine that. You leave on a diplomatic mission, and you spend the next 10 years as a prisoner of war.
10 years. He marries a Xiongnu woman, has kids. He essentially integrates, but he never forgets the mission. He keeps the imperial token, his credentials, hidden the whole time.
That loyalty is incredible. Eventually he escapes, but he doesn't go home. He keeps going west. He crosses the Khmer Mountains.
He finds the people he was looking for, the Yuezhi, and they're basically like, no, thanks, we're happy here. We don't want to fight the Xiongnu.
So militarily, the mission is a total bust.
A bust. But when Zong Qin finally makes it back to China after being captured again on the way back, he brings something more valuable than an alliance. He brings information. He tells the emperor, hey, there is a whole world out there. He talks about Fergana, he talks about India, which they called Shundu, he talks about Parthia.
This is the aha moment. Emperor Wu realizes that China isn't the only civilization. He learns that there are other great empires, other goods, and other opportunities. And specifically, Zong Qian talks about the horses.
The heavenly horses of Dayan.
The blood-sweating horses. These were likely Akaltek horses from the Fergana Valley, modern Uzbekistan. They were larger, faster, and had more stamina than the native Chinese ponies.
And Wu becomes obsessed. He needs these horses to rebuild his cavalry after the devastating losses against the Xiongnu.
Obsess is the right word. He sends a trade delegation with golden horses to buy the real horses.
Yeah.
The king of Dayan is insulted, refuses the trade, and kills the ambassadors.
Bad move.
Terrible move. Emperor Wu sends an army, not just a raiding party, an army of tens of thousands, marching thousands of miles just to besiege a city for livestock.
And the first army gets wiped out by hunger and thirst.
So what does he do? He sends a bigger one. 60,000 men, 100,000 oxen.
He emptied the prisons to fill the ranks. It was an all-in bet.
And it worked. They besieged the city, cut off the water supply, and the nobles of Diwana killed their king and gave the horses to the Han.
It's incredible to think about. We think of the Silk Road as this peaceful caravan of camels carrying spices, but it really started because an emperor wanted super horses to fight nomads.
Precisely. The Silk Road wasn't built for trade initially. It was built for war and diplomacy. Trade was the accidental byproduct. But that byproduct changed the world. Suddenly you have Chinese silk in Rome and Roman glass in China.
So he's expanding west. He also pushes south into Naniu, that's modern Vietnam and Guangdong. He pushes east into Korea, establishing commanderies there. He basically doubles the size of the empire.
He created the shape of the map. But, and here's a massive but, wars cost money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. You mentioned the lost horses. You have 60,000 men marching to Central Asia. How on earth is he paying for this?
The treasury that Grandma Du left behind must be long gone by now.
Oh, long empty. Emperor Wu and his officials, specifically a financial wizard named Song Hongyang, had to revolutionize the economy. They implemented state monopolies on salt and iron.
Salt and iron, the two things absolutely everyone needs.
Exactly. Salt is life. You need it to preserve food. Iron is for tools, plows, axes, knives. Song Hongyang argued that if the state controlled these, the profit would go to the army, not to, greedy merchants.
So if I'm a peasant and I need a new plow, I have to buy it from the government store.
Yes. And because it was a monopoly, the quality often dropped. There are records of peasants complaining that the state-produced iron tools were brittle and useless, but they had no choice.
They also created a system called equitable marketing, right?
Which sounds nice, but it basically meant the government would buy goods when they were cheap in one place and sell them when prices were high in another. The government became the biggest speculator in the market, undercutting private merchants.
It's just a massive expansion of the state into every facet of life.
It is. They taxed everything: boats, carts, property. It caused widespread suffering. The historical records mention peasants fleeing their homes to avoid the tax collectors, turning into bandits or vagrants. The population on the tax rolls dropped by half, partly from death, but partly from people just hiding from the government.
It seems like there is this constant tension in his reign. On one hand, he is establishing the Imperial University in 136 BC, promoting Confucianism, which is all about benevolence and righteousness.
The official face.
But on the other hand, he is using these harsh legalist officials to extract every copper coin from the peasantry to fund his wars.
That is the Confucian legalist hybrid. It's the defining characteristic of imperial China for the next 2,000 years. He used Confucianism as the software, the moral justification, the hierarchy, the idea that the emperor is the father of the nation. But the hardware, the operating system, was pure legalism.
Legalism being the philosophy of might makes right, harsh punishments, strict laws.
Exactly. He employed what history calls cruel officials, men like Yi Zong, who would execute people for internal defamation, basically, for looking like you disagreed with the emperor in your heart.
And nothing illustrates that contradiction better, I think, than the story of Sima Qian.
The grand historian.
This story breaks my heart every time I hear it. Sima Qian is writing the history of the world, basically. He's the father of Chinese history.
He serves in the court. And in 99 BC, a general named Li Ling, the grandson of one of the old heroes, is sent north. He fights heroically, surrounded by thousands of Xiongnu. He runs out of arrows and eventually surrenders.
The emperor is furious. He sees it as treason. Everyone in the court starts bad-mouthing Li Ling to please the emperor. Everyone except Sima Qian.
Sima Qian speaks up. He says Li Ling is a good man. He fought bravely. He only surrendered to save his men. He probably intends to escape later.
Which is a reasonable defense.
It is. But Emperor Wu, in his paranoia, interprets this defense as an attack on his own brother-in-law, another general who had failed to support Li Ling. So he sentences Sima Qian to death.
But in the Han Dynasty, you could commute a death sentence if you paid a massive fine.
Which Sima Qian couldn't afford. Or you could accept the punishment of castration.
And we have to understand the cultural context here. For Confucian gentlemen, your body is a gift from your parents. To mutilate it is the ultimate filial sin. It was a fate worse than death. Most men would have committed suicide to save their honor.
But Sima Qian chose the knife. He chose the humiliation. He chose to live as a eunuch. Why? Because he hadn't finished his book.
The Shiji, the records of the grand historian.
He wrote in a letter to a friend that if he died now, his life would be lighter than a feather. He needed to finish the history. He endured the shame for the sake of the truth.
It's so ironic, isn't it? The emperor wanted glory. He wanted to be immortalized. But the man who wrote his history, the man who decided how we remember Wu, was the man Wu mutilated.
And Sima Qian's portrayal of Wu is fascinating because of that. He acknowledges the greatness, the expansion, but he doesn't shy away from the cruelty, the superstition, the paranoia. He paints a portrait of a man who gained the world but lost his soul.
Speaking of losing his soul, let's talk about the supernatural stuff. For a guy who was so strategic, Emperor Wu was incredibly gullible when it came to magic.
He was terrified of death. This is common with absolute rulers. They have everything, so the only enemy left is mortality. He built the House of Life. He sponsored shamans. He traveled to Mount Tai for the Feng and Shan sacrifices to communicate with heaven.
He even married his daughter to a magician, a guy named Luan Da.
Luan Da was a classic con artist. He claimed he could travel to the immortals, that he could stop the Yellow River from flooding. Wu gave him titles, gold, and his daughter.
And when Luan Da turned out to be a fraud,
Wu had him executed. But the obsession didn't stop. He just looked for the next magician. And this obsession with the unseen world, combined with his declining health and old age, set the stage for the final tragic act of his reign.
the witchcraft scandal, or the Wugu calamity.
This is where the HBO drama turns into a horror movie. We are in 91 BC. The emperor is nearly 70. He's sick, he's frail, and he starts having hallucinations.
He sees tiny puppet assassins chasing him with swords.
And in a court built on fear, there are people ready to exploit that. Specifically, a man named Jiang Chong. He was the head of secret intelligence.
And Jiang Chong had a problem. He had a beef with the crown prince, Prince Ju.
A huge problem. Prince Ju was the son of Empress Wei Zifu. Remember her? The singing girl who became empress? Prince Ju was a lenient Confucian man. He hated the harsh officials like Jiang Chong. Jiang Chong knew that if the old emperor died and Prince Ju took the throne, Jiang Chong would be executed.
So it was kill or be killed.
Exactly. So Jiang Chong decides to strike first. He convinces the paranoid emperor that the hallucinations are being caused by witchcraft Wugu cursed dolls buried in the ground. The emperor gives him authority to investigate.
And an investigation by Jiang Chong is a nightmare. He starts digging up the palace floors, he tortures servants, he arrests thousands of people.
And then the checkmate. He claims to find voodoo dolls in the crown prince's palace.
The prince is cornered. He knows he's innocent, but the evidence is planted. He knows his father is away at the summer palace, likely hallucinating, and Jiang Chong controls all the messengers. He can't explain himself.
His tutor gives him some advice. He says, look at history. When the heir to the Qin dynasty was framed, he didn't fight back and he died. If you don't act now, you are dead.
So Prince Ju takes a desperate gamble. He mobilizes the palace guards. He captures Jiang Chong and executes him. He unseals the armories. He essentially starts a coup to save himself.
But to the emperor, receiving fragments of news at the summer palace, it doesn't look like self-defense. It looks like a rebellion.
The emperor is told his son is trying to kill him.
The old lion wakes up. He orders the premier army to march on the capital. They battle in the streets of Chang'an for 5 days. It was a civil war in the capital. Thousands died. The gutters ran with blood.
And the prince.
He was defeated. He fled the city and eventually committed suicide in a peasant's hut. His mother, Empress Wei Zifu, who had been the emperor's partner for decades, also committed suicide.
It's a total wipeout. The emperor's wife, his heir, his grandchildren, all dead.
Except for one baby grandson who was thrown into prison. It is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. The man who expanded the empire to the ends of the earth ended up destroying his own home.
And the worst part is, he eventually realizes he was wrong.
Yes. A year or so later, an official risked his life to tell the emperor the truth, that the prince was only acting out of fear of Jiang Chong. The emperor realized the witchcraft accusations were a lie.
The regret must have been just crushing.
He built a palace called the Palace of Thinking of the Sun. He built a platform called the Return to View Terrace, hoping to catch a glimpse of his son's spirit. It's devastating.
But this leads to what makes Wu so fascinating to me. After 50 years of war, expansion, spending, and tragedy, he basically issues a public apology.
The Luntai Edict, this is in 89 BC, 2 years before he dies, is a remarkable historical document. He publicly admits his mistakes.
What does he say?
He says, I have been foolish, I have overburdened the people, I have listened to liars. He rejects a proposal to send more troops to the west. He stops the wars. He says the priority now is agriculture and rest.
It's so rare for a despot to say, I'm sorry.
Extremely rare. Most emperors would double down to protect their ego. But Wu was pragmatic to the end. He realized the empire was on the brink of collapse. If he didn't pivot, the Han would fall just like the Qin. That apology saved the dynasty.
So we're at the very end. The emperor is dying in 87 BC. He needs an heir. His eldest son is dead. The others are unfit. He chooses his youngest son, Liu Fuling, who is just a child.
Emperor's. He's about 7 or 8 years old.
But there is one final ruthless twist. The mother of this child, Lady Gui.
Emperor Wu looks at this young mother, and he remembers history. He remembers his own grandmother, Empress Dowager Du. He remembers Empress Lu, the wife of the founder of the Han. He knows that when the emperor is a child, the mother holds the power.
And he doesn't want another powerful Empress Dowager messing things up.
So he orders her death.
He kills the mother of his successor.
While she is still young and healthy, she begs for mercy as she is dragged away. He tells the guards, "Take her away, die. This is not something a woman like you can understand."
That is chilling. It's the Golden House all over again. A relationship that starts with a promise and ends with cold, hard political calculation.
It was his final act of statecraft. He sacrificed the woman to secure the stability of the throne. He entrusted the empire to a regency council led by Hu Guang and, interestingly, Jin Midi.
Wait, Jin Midi? That sounds like a Xiongnu name.
It is. He was a Xiongnu prince who had been captured decades earlier. He worked in the imperial stables, impressed the emperor with his integrity, and rose to become one of the most trusted officials.
The ultimate irony. The man who spent his life fighting the Xiongnu entrusted his empire and his son to a Xiongnu.
It shows that Wu wasn't a racist. He was a cultural supremacist. If you adopted Han culture and were loyal, you could be part of the system. It didn't matter where you were born.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean? We have a guy who reigned for 54 years. He gave China the Silk Road. He gave it Confucianism. He gave it the borders that largely define it today. But he also bankrupted the state, killed his own son, and caused immense suffering.
It's the double-edged sword of empire. Historians often compare him to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Both were great unifiers, both were tyrants. But Wu left something that lasted.
The system.
Right, the Qin dynasty collapsed in 15 years because it was too brittle. Wu created a system, that Confucian bureaucracy, that blend of moral software and legalist hardware, that was flexible enough to survive. He broke the machine, but he also fixed it before he died.
It's a lot to process. A reign that started with a romantic promise in a golden house and ended with a lonely tomb at Maoling, surrounded by the ghosts of his family.
A fitting image for a man who wanted immortality but had to settle for history.
And that brings us to the question we want to leave you with today. Emperor Wu is called Great Wu Dai for his expansion, his conquests, the sheer scale of his ambition. But his most human moment was his repentance, the Lintai Edict.
The moment he stopped.
Exactly. So does a leader's greatness come from their conquests, the lines they draw on a map? Or does it come from the ability to look in the mirror, admit they were wrong, and change course? And was the cost, the lives of his family, the suffering of the peasantry worth the creation of the China we know today?
That is the question history asks of every empire builder. And the answer usually depends on whether you're the emperor or the peasant pulling the cart.
A sobering thought to end on. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Emperor Wu. Let us know what you think. Until next time.